Recently, I was lucky enough to visit Busch Gardens Williamsburg and ride all 10 of their roller coasters, even the kiddie coaster, because I'm a true enthusiast. In this video, I will be ranking these coasters from worst to best. Keep in mind that this is solely my opinion, and you are free to disagree. I tried my best to get multiple rides on each coaster and give them all a fair chance, but everything I say is subjective. Feel free to share your own thoughts in the comments. Alright, so let's start the ranking. Number 10. Grover's Alpine Express. Not really much to say, it's a kiddie coaster. It's not horrible, but it's just not good in comparison to the park's bigger rides. I'm just not the target audience for this ride here. Number 9. DarKoaster. This is a pretty well-themed family coaster, but nothing special. The ride vehicles, which are made to look like snowmobiles, are awkward to sit in and don't make sense with the plot of the ride. Overall, the launches and layout were average for a family coaster. Again, I'm just not the target audience for this ride. Number 8. Invader. This ride is quite fun, with a memorable drop and decent airtime. It's a bit rough, but nothing unbearable. Overall, it's an average lower-level thrill coaster. I definitely recommend it to any younger thrill seeker looking to branch out. Honestly, the only reason why this ride is so low on the list is because of this park's other rides being so good, not this particular ride being bad, necessarily. Number 7. Loch Ness Monster. The ride is definitely old and a bit janky, but it holds up well in my opinion. I've seen some people put this ride in dead last against all the other non-kiddie rides, but I just don't agree with that. It's not unbearably rough, and has some fun forces in the back. You really get yanked down the first drop and through the interlocking loops. It's enough for me to at least put it above the more family-oriented coasters at this park. That being said, it's definitely lower in comparison to the park's newer rides in my opinion. Not because it's bad necessarily, it's just that roller coasters have improved so much since this ride was built. Number 6. Tempesto. Yes, I'm aware that this ride is a generic premier ride Skyrocket 2, which is a ride model that can be found at tons of different parks, but that doesn't stop it from being fun. The swing launch was fun, and the inversion provided some of the best hang time that I've yet to experience on a roller coaster. My one complaint is the comfort collars. Just like as I've heard beforehand, they were quite uncomfortable as they slammed into the side of your head at every turn. Putting that aside, I did overall enjoy this ride. Number 5. Verbolten. This ride is mostly a family ride, but I still enjoyed it. The final few turns, as well as the indoor section, were actually pretty forceful for a more family-oriented ride. I'd honestly say, intensity-wise, it's between the average family ride and thrill ride. I really enjoyed the theming of this ride, and of course, spoiler alert, the drop track inside the indoor section. I'd recommend this ride to anyone who can handle a mildly intense coaster. It's really a great coaster, even if it's not the most thrilling in my opinion. Number 4. Griffin. This is a solid coaster. Again, this is generic B&M dive coaster, but that doesn't stop it from being fun. You really get an amazing view of the park at the top of the lift hill, honestly. This coaster is definitely better in the back. The drop-in inversions are so much more forceful. Overall, this ride is solid. Hopefully in the future, I'll ride some more coasters of the same model and see how Griffin stacks up against other dive coasters. Number 3. Alpengeist. Just like other coasters made by Bollinger and Mabillard, the only other B&M invert I've been on is Great Bear at Hershey Park, and I definitely like Alpengeist more. It's tall, speedy, and forceful. I remember feeling blood rush to my feet when sitting the first drop. The cobra roll near the end is also extremely whippy and can really catch you off guard. It did have some rough and rattly parts, notably the transition into the mid-course brake run, which is a little rough, but nothing unbearable. As long as you keep your head back, the over-the-shoulder restraint isn't too bad. Generally, this is a really good coaster. The only reason that it's not number 2 is that I personally prefer more negative G-force or airtime-based rides over positive G-force-based rides like this one. So I ended up enjoying the next entry on this list a bit more. Number 2. Apollo's Chariot. This was one of Bollinger and Mabillard's first hypercoasters, and the age does kind of show. It's certainly not as good as newer coasters of this type like Candymonium at Hershey Park, but it's still a very enjoyable ride. The drop and airtime hills are fun and forceful. There are a few trim breaks near the end of the ride, but they didn't affect the ride experience that much in my opinion. Not the most intense ride ever, but it's a fun one. And lastly, number 1, Pantheon. This is an amazing coaster from start to finish. My only complaint is that all launches were rolling launches. Standing launches tend to be a bit more intense. Also, there's not really much theming, which is slightly disappointing because it would have been so dang cool to have a ride properly themed to Roman mythology. Nonetheless, this ride is among my favorites of all time. My criticisms are minor and don't really affect the enjoyment of the ride in my opinion. The first half starts out slow with a launch into an inversion and some airtime hills. But then you get to the ride's main appeal, the swing launch. You roll back the first time you ascend the top hat, then ascend a vertical spike and roll through the launch tracks again. The small speed hill in between the top hat and the spike gives insane airtime. I was not expecting it to be that forceful, especially in the front and back. The rest of the ride then has more airtime hills and a stall, which was pretty fun. The swing launch and generally the rest of the layout is an absolute blast. Honestly, I'd like to see more rides like this, with a mix of different sensations such as airtime, inversions, and speed. The ride is amazing, and in my opinion, fully deserved to be placed at the #1 spot at this park.